There's a lot of players who come into the NBA and get a ton of support from everybody around the league. Whether it's the anticipation of seeing such a unique talent put on an incredible display of skill, or it's somebody who captivated the audience in a way that few players can only dream of. However, in one way or another, over time, these players who fans once relentlessly cheered for, they've done some things that started to rub people the wrong way. Things that have put a permanent black mark on their reputation and their legacy that probably won't ever go away, no matter how hard they try to fix it. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and without further ado, here are 5 NBA players who went from heroes to villains. Kyrie Irving. It didn't seem too long ago when Kyrie was seen as a young, charismatic, rising star in the NBA. While he wasn't necessarily the best point guard or even a top 5 player for most of his career, he was certainly one of the league's most popular players. And I'd say he even influenced a new generation of young point guards. Those Nike commercials, Uncle Drew, his signature shoe line, and above all else, his playstyle and demeanor. Instead of the brute force of Russell Westbrook, the ridiculous contorting athleticism of Derrick Rose, or the silky smooth shooting of Steph Curry, Kyrie was different. His craftiness, his handles and dribbling skills, and his ridiculous ability to finish layups from all angles. He exemplified a modern version of Allen Iverson, one of the most popular players of all time. Kyrie has stated that the court he grew up playing in had a hole in the backboard, which is why he had to develop unique ways to finish at the basket. However, after winning the championship in 2016 and hitting the biggest shot of his career, in a matter of a few short years, Kyrie went from being on top of the world to a laughingstock. Even though his game has gotten even better, it's been overshadowed because of everything else off the court that made people realize, is this dude crazy? It started with the whole flat earth comments, and he himself admitted to being a huge conspiracy theorist. Then it was the off-court drama and Kyrie's indecision, as he forced his way out of multiple teams. Initially, he wanted out of Cleveland to lead his own team in Boston, but it turns out they were actually better without him. Individually, there's no questioning his talent, as he continued to dominate, when he actually was available to play. As the years went by, people started to turn away from him. A man once revered as an exciting young point guard has turned into a meme. Despite his talent, many teams just don't want to take the risk anymore. Kevin Durant. Like Kyrie, Durant came in as the golden child of the NBA, a guy who was nearly 7 feet tall, but displayed a skill set of a shooting guard. And right when he entered the league, he hit the ground running. Durant was a unicorn. I mean, he still is, but when he was younger, the perception of him was a lot different than it is today. Everyone loved him. He was viewed as the quiet, innocent young superstar who brought a franchise back into prominence. For many years, OKC was viewed as the team who did it the right way, a small market team that developed their homegrown talent into superstars. Then everything changed when he went to Golden State. Days leading up to his decision, nobody thought Durant would actually do it, because nobody thought he wanted to win that way. So when it actually happened and he actually did join Golden State, the perception of Durant completely flipped. He instantly became the most hated player in the NBA. Not just in OKC, but among most fan bases. Him joining the stacked Warriors team meant the rest of the NBA had no chance of winning a title for the next few years. It was also in 2016 where people found out Durant had numerous burner accounts on Twitter, replying to haters to defend himself. It was absurd, and people criticized him for having such thin skin. A multi-million-dollar athlete replying to a bunch of teenagers on Twitter whenever they said something mean to him? It's crazy. It wasn't just that either. When Durant finally won his championships, it was jokingly said that his rings are fake, cause he didn't have to work that hard to get them. Whether you agree or disagree, it's funny either way. I don't think we've ever seen a player who had such a drastic change in their image from the beginning of their career until now. Perhaps it'll change again in the future, you never know. Dwight Howard. It seemed like just yesterday when Dwight was known as the smiling, charismatic young center who would take over the league. There was a time around 2009 to 2011-ish when he was legitimately in the same conversation as LeBron James, after he led his team past the Cavs in the playoffs. From the dunk contest to his playoff dominance to his outgoing persona, Dwight was a lovable character for all the right reasons. Then, by 2012, his reputation started to take a hit. First, it was this incredibly awkward interview that I'm sure all of you remember. So here's the context. Right before this, Dwight reportedly requested the Magic fire Stan Van Gundy, which Van Gundy confirmed to the media that was true. So when Dwight walked up and gave him a hug, it was just a strange moment. However, it also signaled the downfall of not just the Orlando Magic, but his own career as well. Around the same time, Dwight started developing back problems, which forced him to miss the 2012 playoffs. Shortly after, he got traded to LA, and that's where his image took a major hit. Now, when any player joins the Lakers, especially a superstar who is supposed to be the best center in the league, the expectations are absurd. The Lakers crafted a super team, and anything less than a championship would be considered a failure. Sadly, right from the start, they struggled, and Dwight's underperformance made him the prime target of criticism. He didn't look anything like he did on the Magic. The injuries didn't help either. He was also playing through back problems. Yet he still tried demanding the ball and desperately tried to show that he can still play like he used to. This is what Nash said during his time playing with Dwight. He didn't seem like he really wanted to do a pick-and-roll offense. Maybe because he had run one in Orlando for so long and he wanted to get in the post more. Now, I don't blame him. He was under an immense amount of pressure to perform, and he was expected to be the next Shaq, so he felt like he should get the ball more in the post. Yet it was clear he wasn't Shaq, and he wasn't 100% healthy either. Still, fans aren't as forgiving when it seemed like he just wasn't giving it his all. There were even critics who said he smiled too much, and that it shows he doesn't care and he doesn't take the game seriously. Dwight's unwillingness to run the pick and roll carried over to Houston. To give him credit, he played a lot better in Houston and eventually did run more pick and rolls with Harden, but at this point, his reputation was in the gutter. In fact, I'm almost 100% certain that the main reason he didn't get into the NBA's top 75 list was because of his reputation. I mean, he has a phenomenal list of accolades far better than many players on the list, and even turned a mediocre Magic team into a contender. After Dwight's departure, the Magic only had one winning season in the next 10 years. I've even heard some doubts that he could even get into the Hall of Fame, which is ridiculous. He for sure should be getting in. Now in his twilight years, Dwight has somewhat redeemed himself as a role player, but it might be too late. LeBron James. Now, throughout LeBron's career, he could probably be labeled a hero and villain interchangeably, depending on who you're talking to. I think the one time when he was undoubtedly a villain was when he made the decision to join the Miami Heat in 2010. Before that, LeBron was thought of very highly as a player and a person. He got drafted to the team in the state he grew up in, and he developed into the best player in the NBA. But that whole episode with his decision rubbed people the wrong way. For a few years in Miami, especially his first year, oh boy, you had to live through it to understand how much the entire world hated him. Almost every arena outside of Miami booed him during the intros, and when the Heat lost to the Mavs in the finals, the haters rejoiced. People cheered for Dallas because it was a nice story to see Dirk finally win the chip, but also because they wanted to see LeBron lose. Fast forward a few years later and he went back to Cleveland. But at that point, he was deemed a hero because he fulfilled his original promise to bring a championship to Cleveland. Fans started to root for him again, also because he was the underdog. Against the heavily dominant Warriors, LeBron's Cavs were always the underdogs for 4 straight finals. Even those who didn't like LeBron still cheered him on, just because he was up against impossible odds. Then, when he left Cleveland again, this time for LA, the reaction was mixed. But you can't blame him for wanting out when the rest of his team was slacking. Each and every time he joined a new team, his sole purpose was to have a better chance to win the title, regardless of the enemies he made along the way. I'd say the difference between LeBron and Durant's career arc is that LeBron brought a championship to 3 different franchises, and they could not have done it without him. Durant, on the other hand, he joined an already established championship team who did not need him. Karl Malone. I don't even think Malone was ever considered a hero, but for someone who was drafted in the later part of the lottery as the 13th pick, he turned out to be far and away the best player of his class. Longevity, peak, consistency, durability, winning 2 MVPs in his late 30s? Oh, Karl truly showed that age is just a number. Unfortunately, you can't apply that off the court. What ultimately turned Malone into one of the biggest villains in NBA history was the fact that he impregnated a 13-year-old girl when he was 20. Even worse, he did not acknowledge it whatsoever, and even after becoming rich and famous, he refused to support his son, who, by the way, turned out to be former NFL player Demetrius Bell. Eventually, Karl would admit his mistake, and they repaired their relationship decades later. However, keep in mind, this story surfaced in 1998, over a decade into Malone's career. It was basically around the same time as Utah's championship runs, so the NBA tried to bury the story for years. From the league's perspective, you can't have the reigning MVP, one of the league's most prominent players, be vilified like this. Karl was also very active in the community in Utah, a well-beloved figure in his state, so to have this news come out, it's a massive stain on his legacy. Additionally, he was known to be a dirty player on the court, too. Back in the day, he was known for flinging his elbows or intentionally hurting other players when he was frustrated. Even today, despite being the 3rd all-time leader in points, arguably the 2nd best power forward of all time, an extensive list of accolades and accomplishments, despite all this, the respect for him is not as high as it could be, because of his checkered past. Anyway, that's all folks. Those were 5 NBA superstars who were once considered heroes, but became villains as their career progressed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Can you think of any other stars who fit this criteria? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.